So I'm from BuroHappold, and I've been working I work in what's called the construction industry, but it's actually about operating buildings as well. And I work on residential buildings and commercial buildings and a bunch of policy stuff. And so from now into the future, there's a bunch of, and also looking into the past, there's a bunch of policy changes that have happened in the UK and London, which you almost certainly can't read. So in 2016, there was more wind power than coal on the UK grid for the first time. In 2023, they'll turn off the coal-powered fire stations. In 2021, the ultra-low emission zone will expand to the North and South Circular in London, so that'll affect the cars we drive. And there'll be 1 gigawatt of PV installed by 2030, which will provide 15% of London's energy demand. That's the plan. And by 2050, there's plans to have planted 750,000 million hectares of additional trees in the UK, and to increase the area of urban forest by 10% in London. So, roll on. But I think something I want to emphasize is that future is not a result of technology alone, right? So I remember when phones were going to get smaller and smaller and smaller, and everybody was excited about how small phones were going to get, and then they started getting bigger again, because people actually couldn't use small phones. And nowadays, we're kind of led to believe that in 10 years, there'll be an Alexa in every home, or the Google version of it. And I personally think that that's a load of rubbish, and a lot of the technology we're peddled will decide that we actually don't really want. So, we're here, and you're here to decide what the future is going to look like. So, enjoy. So, what did the past look like? The past, this is a picture of a street, not in Camden, I'm afraid, but in Waltham Forest, and there was hardly any cars on it, and all the drives have grass on, and no cars. And this is what it looks like now. There's cars along either side of the street, and all the drives have been paved over. And cars are great. I love cars. When I see Ferraris, I watch them go past and I get really excited. But I'm aware that they do kill people, and I'm probably never going to own one. And I think that's a good thing, on balance. Ferraris can still look nice, but it doesn't mean I want them there. So what are we going to do with the streets? Maybe we're going to have natural driveways, which are going to improve biodiversity. We could have less cars, which means there'll be loads of space for people to play on the streets. And there'll be less traffic, which means we'll use less, we'll import less fuel, and of course we'll have less carbon emissions. And so what could the future of car parking be? That's a little car parking bay that's been converted in Hackney. This is something that's going on in San Francisco, where people found out it was cheaper to use car parks for working than to pay for an office. In Hong Kong, imagine if Camden Market could go back on the street, and you could have an animated streetscape like that. And in Barcelona, they shut down a bunch of streets and painted a basketball court on them. So we've got all that space. At the moment, we give it to cars, but in the future, maybe we won't. That's a little slide just to say that electric cars do have some emissions, but they are less. They have less particulate matter, and they have 0 NOx. So if anybody tells you there's still some emissions, it's true, but electric vehicles have less emissions. And if the roads don't have noisy cars on that are polluting, then what does that mean for a typical road? Here's Kentish Town Road, here's an office block somewhere else that I worked on. And this office block has all the windows fully sealed to make the air quality nice. But if we're not sealing up the buildings, we can have, if there's less pollution, if there's less noise levels, then we don't need to fully seal buildings. And potentially, we can have more openable windows and less air conditioning, and just have nicer spaces. A little note on air conditioning and dress codes. In London, we used to wear things like that, and in Los Angeles, we used to wear, well, I didn't used to wear things like that. Somebody used to wear something like that. And now we wear the same in all different countries. So if we just maybe we will go back to a day where our clothing is better adapted to the climate we live in. I'm going to skip over that one and that one because I want to have my say. I want to say one last thing, that it's going to cost lots of money, but money, I mean, I love money. I get paid money, and, somebody gets paid that money. So if Camden can capture that value by training up their workforce to be electrical vehicle approved, so you have vehicle electricians as well as vehicle mechanics, and to be trusted retrofit providers, then all that money stays in Camden. And maybe Camden has the skills to do all those things in the rest of the borough. So my 3 messages are: encourage the infrastructure that enables car sharing and electric vehicles. Don't install cooling, especially in council buildings if you're thinking about doing it. And encourage relaxed clothing in summer and extra layers in winter. Because actually, I don't agree that everybody will insulate their houses. I actually think a lot of people will just say, I'll just put a jumper on and not use my heating so much. That's probably what I'd do, maybe. I mean, I'm going to get around to it soon, I promise. And finally, encourage local businesses to plan for the risks, but also the opportunities around climate change and how they can make some money out of it and not just complain that it's a regulatory burden.
Great, thank you, Trevor. Thanks.